There we sang.
How do you do?
How do you do?
How do you do? Oh. Where's everybody at, Ernie?
We didn't make a big deal out of this month because I was like really tired. Yeah, nobody.
00, very nice.
Good morning, Breakfast Clubbers!
Good morning, Ernie.
Okay, this is what we're going to do today. One, we're going to learn something from Tim Picciott. I tell you what happened. There's one of us that had gotten a lot of Bitcoin and cryptos, and years ago when they didn't have any resources, they have no children, no family, no close relatives, no nothing, the mother dies. Mother leaves him a bunch of money. Now he's got a bunch of money, sitting here, I got a bunch of money. I want to go live, be left aloneism, buys a home, doesn't want to give his social security number and everything to get power. So he goes, screw you, I'll just get batteries and solar and I don't need you anymore. So he spent a bunch of money on batteries and solar, gets totally off the grid. I'm living large, I'm good. When he got his money and he did all that, what do I do with the rest of it? I don't want to put in bank accounts. I don't want to have to give out, all my ID and bio. I've been out for a decade and a half, living in my diesel Greyhound, pulling my micro mini VW bus and living large and eating vegetables all the time. And I'm a lot healthier. I feel better, made a lot of friends, listened to Ernie's show for entertainment and whatever the hell, right?
Right.
So then he goes, so I put in a bunch of it in crypto, and then it went boom and shot up, and now I got all this money, and man, the man is going to want some. So he goes, how do I have access to this? But more importantly to him is that how do I pass this on to someone that will make use of it, that will forward my immortality will not be through grandchildren. It'll be through the money and the resources that I have that will go to feed the movement. What shall I do with all this money? And I'm going, so the first question is, you mean other than give it to me, right? And I just want to make sure that we, you're not just like, soft selling giving or something, But I'm going, what I advocate is there some way that these nouveau riche crypto 28-year-olds with $100 million, that's it. There was a joke. Oh, it was my son-in-law Tim. He goes like this. He goes, yeah, I read this joke, and it has this good-looking guy in a bar, and he's got these babes around. It's like one of those casino commercials, Yeah, we're all having fun. They're wearing their greatest, evening dress. And he goes, yeah, I'm worth so many millions of dollars in Bitcoin. They go, wow, can you buy us all drinks? Well, I don't have any real money. That's how it really is. The thing is that, of course, you can liquidate it and you can do it. And right now they have, I was looking at a chart that Tim had provided. There's Bitcoin IRAs that they can do to convert and bring your money in. A lot of the drug dealers, when they had banks that would do this, they do it kind of on the low down and charge you 10, 20%, some ridiculous amount of they get their cut for doing it. Bitcoin's doing the same thing. They're going, well, we can take care of this. It's 10% off the top for us to avoid blah, 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 right?
That's the cheapest, I guess.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So the thing is, I'm going, all right, is there a way that we can have these assets put on the books and out, nope, there they are. Yes, this is what I got, and you can't have any. Can you do that? Well, Clinton Foundation and the Bill and Melinda Gates and the so-and-so, they're doing it all the time, So you go, okay, I want to be able to have my money, claim it, there it is, I can use it, take a annual feed off of it, get my taxes deferred of blah, 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 not pay capital gains on it. Is there a mechanism for filthy, stinking, rich, connected politicians to do? Well, yes, there is. We have form number 37 here, So then, how do you take those assets after you pass? And you go, all right, after my death, I want to make sure that all this stuff gets to, fund whatever and freedom and peace, and I got some criteria. How do you do that? Well, then you're still, unless you got some robot you really trust, you're into a trust situation, and trustees and people that make these decisions. So this is what Tim's been working on and has made some success. Oh yeah, those are BB and pellet guns because I got 5 hawks that want my chickens really bad. Then we're explaining it to them. You know, there's a dead tree in my neighbor, and then it's just big ass hawks up there, man. They are pretty, but you know, they get thumped a little bit. A couple pumps, man, they'll figure it out. But so this is a target-rich environment. When we go to Aspen, there was billions of dollars there. Hell, just Patrick Byrne was there. Those billions are there, but billions in crypto. And they're these young guys with all these resources. You better start getting into something. So are they buying assets, land, real estate, gold? Well, likely, but not in the U.S. So all this money is going somewhere else. If you can get to where they can have access to it and legitimize it or launder it or bring it out in the open, they can live on it. You know, defer, cancel, obfuscate, get away from, bypass, whatever taxes like those do on a regular basis. If you just know what's the mechanism that they do that, and that's where Tim comes in. So he's going to explain that to us. The more people that he's, in a second, I'm not done talking. It's happening. So what this target-rich environment up in Aspen, these are the kind of financial services that they're looking for. How can I bring it in? I'm going to give you some of the highlights. Tim's was there the whole time. Got to see all his heroes, man. He was in, high cotton. So he's going to go ahead and give his spiel. But we had Judge Napolitano started it off. Ron Paul ended it. You have Patrick Byrne up there. He from the billionaire CEO of Overstock that we're friendly with, and Tim got the, yo, what's up? At the end of the thing, we're in the parking lot, and everybody's going off to whatever they're doing, and here comes the crowd. It was Doug Casey, Ron Paul, Dennis Kucinich, Patrick Byrne, I mean, all these guys, coming out going, oh, stop. This is the picture we gotta have, so we did a bunch of rounds of pictures. The history that was there when you got G. Edward Griffin and Peter Schiff kind of doing the gold thing and, you gotta have and all that. The conversion of crypto into dollars and so on for different things, I think they were missing it a little bit. A lot of these young people are looking to interface their crypto with the system. They don't want to shoehorn it into the system. How are we going to bring it into the system? Like, screw your system. We're over here. Roger Ver, known as Bitcoin Jesus, worth a billion, gazillion crypto dollars, they put aside, already committed $100 million and bought themselves some sovereign land. They put the bid out, all countries, great and small, we got $100 million, how much land can we get, and your Constitution allow for us to have sovereignty? Put a wall up, peace out, let me know how it works out. Now you can see this in like Haiti, and if you go on a Caribbean cruise and you land on the Carnival, Caribbean, whatever the hell, island that they have, the world's longest over the Lagoon Bay zip line of we got a party, and then they allow some of the Haitians come in and sell their trinkets and trash, but there's a wall. Now there's Haiti, there's Carnival Cruises land, okay? And none shall pass. So this is, we're in the Caribbean, there could be wars and stuff going on, whatever, but nope, we got a wall. This is the idea, what they're trying to do. They're going to have, it's called free land or something like that. $100 million, put it towards whatever, pay off your sovereign debt, and we don't care. But we need to have sovereignty to where we run our own everything. Well, how would you? Not your problem. Well, not your problem. Those crazy people over on the peninsula of the beach over there. So it's going to turn into probably a big homeowner association thing. You're going to have some kind of an agreement, and they're going, this is what you can't do under these conditions, and kind of, and that's it, and so saith, and peace out, and go do what you want. So, but there's no taxes, there's no government, there's no police force, there's no anything, because you can organize yourself. Freedom, there's an app for that, okay? So they have contracts they can do on blockchain, whatever the heck they want to do. It was yesterday, I had on one with Suzanne, and I seen her give a TED Talk a couple of years ago. She has a project called BitNation. BitNation is that you join a nation, a community of like-minded people to whatever, and you think this, and you do that, and you treat this, and you recognize this, and how you finance that, and trade, and whatever, and there's no geographical borders. It doesn't exist. There is no place. It's a philosophy. So here's my ID that I use, my number, my biometric, my retina scan, however you guys want, somebody wants to do it. So next Thursday, I'm having her and Derek and Davi come on the show, and we're going to create our own Precariat Pirate Nation. So we'll just do it and say we already got it. I mean, basically, we just need to put it up, and this is how we're going to, just for grins and giggles. So the other show I did, it was just yesterday, it's called Pre-Search. September 9th, I heard about this, and I went over and I go, yep, done. Here's $100, $50, whatever it is. I mean, I invest in these tokens because if I'd done that with Bitcoin, 8 years ago, I'd be filthy stinking rich, So, I did. I just kept spending it. I go, wow, it's $300 now, and I got it for $4? Well, crap, it's never going to go more than that, But so Pre-Search is a competitor to Google. The way Google, a lot of you people, does anybody know how Google really works? I mean, it's the way I understand it is Google has enormous server farms. I mean, big central plan of I got all your data. They go out and they send out robots, botnet, bots, robobot, but anyway, it's automatic web crawlers and so on, that scours the entire internet. They take pictures of pages, or they take all the data, and then they store all the entire internet. You can go cache. As a matter of fact, Google used to have that. They had a little hyperlink under when your answer would come up, and you'd hit cache. Well, cache would show you what the website or that page looked like a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago. Now, you can still do it with different services and so on, but it is an amazing thing that you can go and look at what was there before and what it used to look like. And it's cached so that they can't delete it. Oh, we never did that. Well, I got a cached copy of it right here. Google's servers does that for the entire internet. They go and take out everything, and all that data is put on their server. So when you do an internet search, you're not searching just an index. You're not searching, it goes out and looks out in the internet to get it. It's got a server sitting right there that already has it. It weights, whether titles, how big the font is, how bold it is, how, whatever. The big thing that Google did that gave it better use was not only did they go looking for the terms that you wanted, they looked for the other people that were looking for the same thing and went to that page, and that would bring it up, and all the other web pages and how many web pages are linked to it. When we first started doing Freedom's Phoenix, that was the one thing that we did. We would push out, people, here's links to us, here's the links, here's a little thing, link, put the link on your page of a link. Well, you had all these pages out there with Freedom's Phoenix on it. It would drive stuff to it. What we found out was going on, and this is certainly apparent during the Levolution, they would just tweak it or penalize it. They go, not this one. I give 15 gazillion examples, but this is how it works. They go, yeah, everything that has to do with this, with the rating of this, that has more links in it, goes to this and this and all this, and the great relevance of people that want that, except this page, this page, this page, and this page. When they started doing Google bought YouTube, that was definitely a thing. So they go, Ron Paul's Peace and Prosperity is now defunded. Google, YouTube just went, you guys are like, telling truth and stuff, can't have that. My opinion and how I'm seeing it go. Last time we had a meeting, Dave Hodges was here, and he was really concerned because his traffic on his Common Sense show is plummeting, as is a lot of these, different alt sites. Ernie, how's that affecting you? I've doubled. Why? What did you do? Nothing. Because I didn't depend on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Well, we have all the accounts and everything, but I could see what they're doing. The more you come up and the more popular you get, the more they turn you off. So my idea was wait until there was viable competition. Wait until there was a real replacement. For YouTube, it's BitChute or DTube and a bunch of others. And we're kind of looking to see, you can do more than one. When we first started doing YouTubes back in 05 and 06, it was called, I remember Tube Master or something like that, that we would load our videos up to one channel, and then you set all the settings, and it went on all the other ones. So you'd be on Blip, Vimeo, YouTube, this tube, that tube, the other tube, and then you would manage, you could see on your dashboard which one were most popular and being played where, and it was amazing. That gets changed in a couple of months. Because they keep changing your access to. They don't want you to be able to do this. They don't want you to be able to manage it yourself. They don't want you to be able to bypass their stuff. So my thing was, I'm going, when they have a decentralized, they can't stop it, I put over here and it's there forever signal, then I will go ahead and do a big giant, here I am over on Facebook and YouTube and here, I just want everybody to know I'm here so I can tell you I'm over there now. Because if I do it right, a bunch of attention will go to it, and then they'll turn it off. Tick, 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 tick. So I got to wait. We got to have everything ready over here first. Then you do it, and use that as a marketing campaign. We're over here now. That's the plan. That's what's going to happen. We're going to do it for this election cycle in 2018. I had to make sure that, because you're still voting, I need to make sure that supporters knew what I was doing and why. And I got to try, whatever, Ernie, you've always kind of, pissed them off, so go piss them off again. Because this is, vote or not, I don't care, that's not it. To me, it's about opinion. It's just the public's opinion. I think this should happen, this shouldn't be, and this was that and that and that. And that. What happens after that? Don't know, don't care. It's opinion. When people have the opinion that the government sucks and they're being bad and they should and they shouldn't, politicians can't wait to run in front of that parade and tell you how they're the champion or whatever the hell it is everybody already wants. So that's what I do. I don't want to take credit for it. I just want to change the mood and opinion. Monday, I speak at the Arizona and County Libertarian Party. They asked me to talk about, they're really all pumped up. They're going to have campaigns this election cycle, and they're going to go after clean election money. They're going to spend a bunch. Everybody's going to get a job. They're just woo. I'm going. I can't help you. They go, well, how do you get the press? Ernie's going to come tell us how to get press. And I go, first, don't do that crap. Okay, that's the first thing. The only press you're going to get is how communist you are. But so I got to thinking, I'm going to have to show them. And the same thing on the national level. The national chair, Libertarian Party, a guy named Nick Sarwark, lives here in the Valley. And it has become very clear they're going to the left, and we're Bill Weld, and we vouch for Hillary and need a little bit of war here, and and it's not that bad. Come on in, the water's fine. We're on the Christmas list of the Democrats now. And I'm going, you guys, I don't know what to do other than try and defend the definition of libertarian. That's what I've always been trying to do. I think there's overwhelming resources are coming to snatch that away, which I don't care, as long as people have a clear understanding of a philosophy that they do support. I think I can make the transition to where libertarianism still gets defined and it's got a Ron Paul thing to it, and that it would be equated with voluntarism or leave me aloneism, or where they just start to understand the basics of, it's not about how well you're going to get ruled. The decentralization of everything is where our pirate stuff goes in. That's taken off and doing well, and people are getting it. already started doing radio advertising. I put $5,000 into radio advertising across the country on different freedom-oriented shows and stuff, promoting that. The other thing was that I wanted to make sure that we had.
Making it rain.
Why would all of a sudden water come out of my misting system? That never worked. I'm being poisoned here, man. That's CIA stuff. Anyway, so I am of the opinion that the time is right, like with the Levolution. Now, a lot of the people I went to, I said, remember in February of 07, I came up to you guys, and I go, get ready, here it comes, having no idea that the Ron Paul Levolution was going to take off like it did. There were factors in my head that I was paying attention to, and the news at the time, and the mood, and the opinion of what was going to happen around someone that wasn't going to back down. It's because of not backing down. When they go and you're up on the stadium and the podium and you're up against all the other, scumbags up there, we're going to rule you better than the other guys. And you go, how about you just not be ruled in peace? And we just marched in, we can march out, and I'm not afraid of you media, and you're bad, and and Israel can fight their own wars, and the military-industrial complex can go into plowshares or whatever. You do that, and then the people went stupid and went, "Yeah, man, what?" Especially the young. This totally blew them away, and they didn't see it coming because they weren't paying attention to the mood. I have the same feeling now that I did then. There is massive change that's coming, and they're trying to, all what they learned about of all of the sites and the traffic and so on is to move it over to them, forward whatever they want. You want a revolution? We'll give you a real revolution. There's going to be chaos and blood in the streets, and we're going to have a revolution, and this guy with a gun's going to replace that guy with a gun, and you'll be free, So these are always the promises. In this chaos, excuse me, I got soften it away too. That's annoying. So I'm of the opinion that I don't think we can wait till 2020 to do this. I need to have an example, and I don't know any better way to do it than to be successful locally so that it has an impact on people nationally.
Very good.
So that, and it has to be to where I am positive that it can be done. I can do it. I've done it 15 gazillion times, and not rely on anyone. So it's not a centralized effort. Whatever I do, whether it's initiative, run a campaign, support someone for a campaign or whatever, it has to be hardcore, no compromise, pirate kind of man. We're no, dicking around effort that is educational and clear on what's happening, but also a solution. The solution is the decentralization of everything. Being able to, get your bathroom light bulb off the grid and power your own something. Have, grow your own little milk carton tomato plant. Something. So the idea is decentralization, that you pull yourself from the grid. Now, I'll give you an example. There has been, if you go watch James Corbett's, the rise of oil, big oil, and how it was phenomenal. It was an hour and a half, and it was the best time I ever spent. And I go, I've read the book, The Prize, and I've watched all kinds of stuff there, but man, he really put it together. Is that it's a philosophy we're up against. There are those that can subsist on our bondage, parasitic entities that because they can, and that's really all it is. And they use government to protect their monopoly. They use government to protect their monopoly and to eliminate competition and to reinforce whatever it is that they want to do. And oh, by the way, they get to expand in every aspect of our lives. You got all the energy. They got, the Rothschilds were banking that got into oil. The Rockefellers were oil that got into banking. So then it just kind of like, now they got the central banks and the plan of the money of the energy. Then all the oil pharmaceuticals, went into all the drugs and healthcare, and they seeded all of the medical schools, and then you get the seminaries, and on and on and on. It's opinion. That's all that they're working for, is to have their opinion mandated on everybody else.
Yes.
If you can have your own opinion and have that opinion articulated, that I just want to be left alone, and the purpose of government was to do that, to allow for that, just to have that opinion expressed a lot will jack up their crap. I know this, you know this, it's just how do you do it? So I'm going, okay, this is what I want to do. Signs everywhere, sign. Okay, so there's going to be a lot of signs. Because it's the only thing that you can bypass them directly and send them somewhere, but you got to be ready. PiratesWithoutBorders.com is a favorite of a lot of the guys. It's going to be a thing. I'm feeling comfortable about putting a lot of effort into that. It has to have each of the categories solutions on communication, education, transportation, automation, food and water, shelter, education. I mean, you need to have this kind of thing on energy. I mean, you have to have an understanding that you're not going to be independent if you're dependent. The Koch brothers, Koch Industries, they started a big television, for anybody that watches television, there was a campaign that had talking about how bad alternative energy and making batteries and solar panels was. The graphic image was a poor little black Congolese, whatever, Central Africa kid sitting in the mud with these little big screen saucer things going through and pulling out elements that rare earth, minerals and so on to help build batteries and solar panels. The solar alternative energy group is exploiting this little black kid, okay? And I go, wow, man, they're really reaching on this, Well, they're going on about how bad batteries are for the environment and how much you're screwing up, you're not green if you get an electric car. I mean, they're really pushing it. And I'm going, wow, this is awesome. Okay, they're missing the point. What would be the point that I would make? You can look at the stats and how and who and what and polluting and done. If you want, just go central planning and have big giant nuclear plants. But I'm just going, that is not what's happening. What's happening are people are excuse me. Sausage would be a pain in the butt. What's going on is that there is a drive towards decentralization. What happens when Puerto Rico is totally devastated? Peter Schiff was on my show a few weeks ago, about a week before the Nexus conference. The first hurricane had come through, and he's like, we just skated, man. We kind of made it, Because his thing is, they have to live and work at least 70-80% of the time or something in Puerto Rico to be able to get the tax benefits there. It's a U.S. territory or U.S. something, and so it's U.S. citizens, but you're not under the same tax thing, and you get like no capital gains and no income of no something. I mean, a big reduction. So he took his business and moved it there, but they have to be there a certain amount of time in order to qualify. When the first hurricane came through, they go, cool, man, we can stay here and do work, and it's all good, and we skated. I saw him at Aspen. He hadn't even been back since. He goes, it's gone, man. They just wiped that island clean. There's no power. And he goes, my guys can't work there. Are we going to lose our tax benefits by not being, because we don't have power? So then what does Elon Musk do? He goes, I can power your whole island. We can put up some solar. Why spend all this money on this infrastructure? We just put up panels and batteries and you're done. And you guys are autonomous energy off the grid. The man don't get none. And here you go. What? Might as well do it now. Well, the man don't like that. So what is the power of solar and batteries, storage, and so on? It's decentralization. It's what takes you off of their grid So I'm not looking at, a lot of the things that they want to try and tell me is important. I'm looking at what to me is important is being independent and not dependent on the grid. This happens with water, it happens with food, it happens with energy, it happens with shelter, and that's what we're doing. Food, dome shelter, electrical power. This is what I want to promote as an opinion. There's no legislation. There's no you gottas. It's just, this is the opinion. Here's some solution. Here's the information you need. I know you guys are busy. Do it a little bit. Peace out, and we're off the grid. No, we're above the grid. I got this shirt too. We have made these. This is the most popular one. I don't have a bunch anymore. We're not off the grid. We're above the grid.
Yay!
Okay. So this whole thing is to promote this concept. That's the campaign. I was on a political forum with Christina Tobin from Free and Equal put this on at the Aspen thing. And on the panel was me, Jesse Ventura, and Dennis Kucinich. Now, of course, they're saying politics works and we got to serve and vote for me and you should get out there and we can take it back. And I'm going, do you guys really think Ron Paul lost? Lost what? It didn't have an enormous impact of an awakening of an opinion. This is what I'm going for. These opinions, that people just had the opinion that should be different, better, I should be left aloneism to do whatever. When we have we did a 23-foot about, largest I could get the most used to have a 10-foot sections of 3/4-inch conduit, a 4-phase, dome, blah, blah, blah. Adam Kokesh took 3 domes up to Washington State. I went up there and they had constructed them on this farm, friends of ours. They put up the 4-phase, 3/4-inch, 22-foot dome. It is, and bolted it down to, and this is the first time that I've seen constructed the 3/4-inch 4-phase. I wanted to see how strong it was. It is a rock. Concrete platform, stucco it over, put some spray insulation, whatever, working on it now. I was so impressed with that. That's a 2-phase, the other over there are 3 of it. And these are 1/2-inch conduit. If you go to 3/4-inch, then you make it 4-phase, Pebbles and Bam Bam and Flintstones ain't got it on me, man. We're gonna have us a rock, whatever. So I'm going to go ahead and start building my whole home, based on this foundation, because I can do a 3,000 square foot home for less than $10,000. So I'm going, well, let's do that. But what's the problem? Where? There are states and different places that you can do it without permit on your land. But here in Arizona, and I'm going, no. No. So that's one of the things that I want to make a big deal at. I can't be free if I can't, without bothering anybody else. Heck, give me some criteria. If I got, a section, I got 2 acres. How far do I got to be from my neighbors before they give a crap whether I live in a dome or not? What do I got to do to be able to collect some rainwater? What do I got to be able to do to grow in my front yard? Oh my goodness, out in unincorporated county of, leave me alone.
You have to stand 1 foot that way for the rainwater.
Right. Yeah, just move over one way or the other. So this is the kind of campaign issues that nobody's bringing up. The purpose of government was to defend my individual rights, to be left alone, to pursue my happiness, and I'm not allowed. So how do we make this a big thing? See, it's not about a candidate. It's not about a party. It's about an opinion. If I can shift that opinion, no, we've had a lot of experience in that. Concealed carry without permit in Arizona is a thing. That started in 1994 with Donna and I. Unrestricted concealed carry, with no permit, blah, blah, blah. That's where SAFE came from. Second Amendment is for everyone. SAFE. Are you a safe gun owner? Are you an unsafe legislator? So this is, I'm like, bring it on. So when this Vegas stuff happens, just like with Sandy Hook, we know what's coming. We know what the arguments are. I don't think they're going to have as easy a time as they thought. Like Gary was pointing out, there's some legislation for reciprocity nationally for concealed carry and for bringing in, ear protection act, so you have sound suppressors on it. That's one thing that's interesting. In Europe, in the UK, sound suppressors, silencers on hunting rifles and everything is required. They're like, man, what the hell? I want to listen to your crap. So they come hunting, they got a suppressor in their thing, man, they're in trouble. Mark, you can't be caught. No. Why? Because it's all this fear-mongering stuff. I'm going to do my best to take away the fear. In Paris, when they had the big massacres there, what happened? All the people went into the streets. And you remember the one kid, little 6-year-old kid or something, and his father? Did you ever see that video? They go, well, are they going to shoot us, Dad? And there's like news there, and he's like, no, they're just, we're here to make sure that the bad guys don't. He has some great explanation for this kid. Oh, okay. So he's not afraid. It was amazing. That one little scene, just a father talking to his son out in the crowd. Is there going to be We're Not Afraid gathering in Vegas? Sooner or later. I mean, we may do something just because, if it doesn't already get done on its own. That's what they wanted. Was for us, especially in America's playland, that you can't even have fun here because what stays in Vegas will be your body. So, that's a good one. You like that one? So, I'm just like, this is, it's all tactic. It has to be balanced on the other side. There has to be, we're not afraid. If we can do that, now they may come after and so, but it doesn't matter. It's a decision that you make. And it is represented with action. I don't know what we're going to do. But we have the resources now. We have, the machines. And I just got, Mark Victor redid, about a year ago, he redid his office and got a bunch of new equipment. Well, he kept it up really good. It's all really good shape. And there's a Ricoh collating, big, giant, super duper color copier you see at Kinko's, and pay the extra money for. I got my studio right now. I went ahead, the hard drives out of it and went and set up. It's fine, bit the bullet and had a guy come out. I thought it was going to be like $1,500 or so. It wound up being $275. Totally refurbed this thing. Thing works great. I can make spiral bound books. We have the duplicators. We have all of the video and accumulated information. We can really put up together a really good website and have them to get all the social media that we're going to kick ass. To do what? The opinion. How? I don't know yet. You guys, we can talk about it after Tim's presentation. I want you guys to think about it. Spaceship One, Government Zero, we started. All the activism that we did in the 90s that brought a lot of attention to things. The Levolution, the radio show, the websites. Now, everything that we've done has continually done one thing that I always knew to be a problem. Whenever you have a successful effort like this, it gets replicated and you start extending yourself out to where you can't really cover it. It goes national, it goes international. Yes, we're going to have the big, and it takes a lot of concentration and effort to stop and bring it back local and be an example for others to take it on themselves. They don't have to be a branch of you or We Are Change, Colorado and stuff. Everybody always trying to make chapters or making it bigger. My goal is to have a really good example of whip ass here in Arizona. If you do it in Arizona, which is what we always did and why we've been successful in a lot of the things that have happened, is being a good example. So we're going to set something. I need a good candidate. I'll do it if I have to. I would rather not. But it's going to take someone that has to be hardcore and pretty like Alec.
Yes.
So that's hardcore, not going to compromise, has some experience, and can make use of, the resources that we have to put up excuses of just, hell, if they didn't even say anything and just did 30 seconds a week of hello, and I'm pretty, and look at my shiny teeth, and then it's just a bunch of signs with a lot of supporting material. This is what happened with the Levolution and what happened with 15 gazillion of other things. I already know this. I'm letting you guys know because you're the first. We will go ahead and start working on this. Monday I may make an announcement. We'll see how things go. The National Party is going towards this Bill Weld, libertarian party of we get to be, communist, and it gets us more votes and invites to Christmas parties or something. I don't know what the heck they're working on. Pardon me?
Rachel Maddow's house.
Yeah, Rachel Maddow's. Yeah, I don't laugh. It's and Weld's Council on Foreign Relations. I mean, if that doesn't tell you everything you need to know. So this is what my thought process is now. All the resources that we have, and you will take through a year. So this is going to be a year of what? Of changing opinion, of made you look. This is what, and what is that? Decentralization. You be responsible for you. Now, I'm glad some of you are here that are retiring, have assets, looking at what the stock market's doing, kind of getting that beat on, I'm doing okay. I am of the opinion, this is getting ready to go. It should have gone years ago. I can't believe how long they've held this off, but everything is showing that by this, they're going to try and hold it off one more election cycle. And then right after that, it's going to be one more election cycle. But the pension funds in this country are way underfunded, and there's no way they're going to keep up with what they're promising to do. And it's not going to happen. And even if it does, the inflation is so much that here's your $1 million check, go buy a loaf of bread. So, I mean, we're at the precipice. What should you do with it? Well, a lot of these guys that are just skyrocketing in cryptocurrency, they really don't have an easy flow of how they can bring it into their life without, showing their just got a bunch of cash and where'd you get your Lamborghini, So there's a method to doing that, and Tim will talk about that. What I wanted to share with you, and we'll talk about Nexus maybe a little bit more, Tim's presentation, some of the guys there, these are the people who are going to change the world. I remember sitting at picnic tables at Porcupine Freedom Festival years ago in New Hampshire in the summer of, where these kids in their mid-20s are talking about how they're going to change the world and become filthy, stinking rich, and the man can suck it. Because they saw what happened during the Revolution. They learned about the central banking, the wars, what happened to Ron Paul, the political process. Nope, we're going to do it with money and decentralization. These guys are now gazillionaires. They're there with a long-term plan. They're all over the world, and they don't recognize borders and boundaries. It's philosophy. Now, when I saw, I was looking at Donald Trump's, I'm only about a third of the way into it, but I was really digging, what I think he was trying to do. Now, these are my slaves. You're not allowed to have them. America is America, and I rule them, and you don't get them. That kind of, that might be his attitude too. But at the United Nations, he made it really clear that the whole purpose of them was to support the sovereignty of each nation, not to take them over and put them all in one thing. They always, of course, that was their, goal. But the thing is that that's never what they promise. They always promise you more freedom and prosperity and 2 chickens and cars and all kinds of crap, and you'll be free and left alone and we won't bother you, as long as you join our secret handshake club, but we won't bother you. Then we bother you. So this is kind of what, as I'm a third away into it, because I didn't want to just have it in the background as I'm doing stuff, because you miss a lot of things. When I got a time and attention, I'll sit there, or something's processing, and I would just sit there and watch it. And all the words coming out of his mouth is respect of individual sovereignty as nation states. When you get down to the individual, you can talk to me, but I can see that they, them, those are not Trump, man. They do not like it. On a worldwide basis. Now, these little developing countries may be going, yeah, what he said, right on. But the big bad boys go, oh, hell no, here comes Soros. There is enormous amounts of money coming in to change your opinion.
Yes.
And that opinion is definitely going to be anti-gun. And the thing that makes it, you go to Catalonia, they've declared their independence from Spain. They did a vote, and it's not binding, it's not legal, it's not, okay, we're going to do that Monday. Monday, Parliament comes again, we go, yeah, we're all gone, we're gone. And they go, yeah, we just disbanded your parliament, said it's illegal, you're not allowed to meet, and we got, like guys with guns and stuff. I mean, they are really coming after this. About 5 years ago, a friend of mine and his friend, a bunch of wealthy guys, were sitting at the country club of Ain't We Somebody in Vegas. And we had the table, and he goes, you see this salt shaker? That's Greece. You see this other salt shaker? That's Portugal. You see this sugar thing? That's Italy. You see the table? That's Spain. And he goes, you'll hear all about Greece will go, and Italy have its problems, and, you know, and Cyprus did its thing, and all this kind of goes. When Spain starts going, then you know. That's the economy they have, then you know. Germany's going to be behind doing whatever the hell they're doing. Spain. Spain. Here it comes. Catalonia is like their, I don't know, their industry, they're high tech, they're prosperous, they're tourists, they got it going on. They're a different culture and they're doing better. Well, of course, they're sucking off of them. Do you remember when Quebec wanted to secede from Canada? They won't speak French and everything. And everybody's like, vaya con Dios, man. See you later. It's been real. What did they realize? Alberta's what funded everything. Alberta in the West, you know, so the industry and lumber and money and you go off. Good. We're tired of you taking all our crap. And they're like, maybe we won't get your crap if we leave? Damn it. You know? So what do we got here? California. California wants to see peace, man. Vaya con Dios. Don't let the door hit you in the butt. You know, so it's not going to go. And if they do, I don't care. You know, let them go. What are they going to want? You know, have an earthquake and they're going to be Puerto Rico. They still want to be some kind of we get your tax money thing or something. And their pensions are done. It's a financial thing. This all is going to get Trump, for lack of a better word, on the finances. So I am of the opinion that if we can get and inject a little bit of economics and understanding of where the problem is. Test. Is that better?
That's good.
Where this is going is it's going to be a bunch of decentralized little efforts in communities that will fix it themselves if they have the opinion that not only should they, that they can. And when the economy goes, when these pensions start getting taken, which they already have in Europe, France has gone in and said, oh, I'm sorry, all this money that was yours is ours now. Banks are going, oh, yeah, it's yours, but you just can't have it now. Oh, we're going to do a haircut of 10%, it's not yours now. We're going to extra tax on the yada, yada, yada. I mean, it's coming. So all you guys, if you're not holding it, it's not in a safe, it's not hidden into whatever, it's not in a crypto wallet, it's not really yours if you can't get it. That's what I'm fearing is going to happen. Hopefully Tim will talk about some of the pension stuff. So I wanted to share this with you because it's been the positive supporting evidence reinforcement of everything that I've been building up and thinking as I look at all the news and do my shows and all that kind of stuff was reinforced when we were in Aspen. These people think globally, galactically. They're not thinking, about how they're going to survive this. They just know that they have to, and they got ideas, and they're, wheeling this out not on a United States basis, not even on a state basis. Well, the laws in Arizona are different than Montana. They're not even thinking that way. They're going, our company is in Barbados. We're looking at international coin offerings of we do and built our own land of Liber land in the middle of Europe, and we got in Honduras and Central America of kind of the seasteading of the pirate ship or carrier that we're flying over and bite me. When I gave the presentation, and part of my presentation I did there, why I'm still so optimistic after I detailed all the stuff that I knew was happening, as I go, right after in April of this year, I gave a presentation in Panama on our concept, this kind of talk, right? This is what's coming, this is what we're going to do, this is why you watch what happens. So I can go be clairvoyant, right? So I tell them all this. 2-3 days after I gave the presentation, it was announced that Sergey Brin, the co-founder of Google, is building his own airship right now for $150 million to do what we're talking about. Because he can. And his co-partner in Google, Larry Page, has got his own flying car company. In Dubai, just in July, they started the flying car taxi service. Now Boeing is doing a jetpack competition, $2 million prize, and I know 4 or 5 of the different ones that are already in work now. They go, we don't need a flying car. I just do my flying jetpack. Now, not later. What's the regulation on that? What happens when I want to live out in Surprise in the middle of the desert, Whispering Ranch, and kiss my butt, but it's a 40, 50-minute drive to get to where I got to have a 40, 50-minute more drive, So what happens when I got my personal backpack and I carry my briefcase in? Hell, my backpack is my briefcase. I'm George Jetson walking around my car. These things, they just came out now, lithium-ion batteries. They have lithium-ion batteries powering the Tesla and doing everything. They just came out with the lithium metal hydroxide, whatever the heck it is. I was reading it, at least 3 to 10 times the storage capacity. So let's say 5. 5 times the storage capacity. On Freedom's Phoenix right now, they have where they took a battery car and they went 700 miles on one charge. 1,200, 1,300 kilometers. 700 miles on one charge, and it's got the performance of an electric. They had a Mustang. One company comes up. They make hot rods out of classics. You get the '68 Mustang, the '68 Camaro, the '72 Nova. You get it. Bigger battery engine with a blower. They put an electric motor in it. It goes faster. They go on the drag strip. They wanted to get the speed record for a Mustang was 120, 30 or something. But there was another one, a modified one, a Shelby Mustang. He went in and he did 170 miles an hour or something. It's the fastest that this Mustang had ever gone. And at a certain point, you get to where just the aerodynamic shape of it, you're pushing up against a wall. It's exponential, the drag, the pressure you get from the air. It can only go so freaking fast. I mean, you get to a point, man, it doesn't matter. It's like light speed, more energy, just, it's a pain in the butt. So what happened is he was able to beat the top speed, 170-something miles an hour, in an electric Mustang. And he goes, is electrification of these classics possible? Yes. Inevitable. These are the things that are coming, and now you get the density, and you can get a fifth of the weight of the batteries. It's just going to go faster, maybe a little bit. But that density allows what? I get on my little jetpack, whirly gig, something, turbines of speed, and go do whatever I want. It's called Lilium. You look it up, Lilium, a 2-seat robotic vertical takeoff, landing plane in your driveway now. They already test flown it. They're building one with 5 seats now. Electrically powered, little ducted fans. Now, not later. Who is going to buy these? The guys that have crap load of crypto money, that go out on a little island of whatever the heck, and they need transportation if I got it because I can. This is coming, and it's going to come a lot faster than you think. And all of this decentralization, leave me aloneism with technology to support it, for them to be able to feed, house, shelter, power, transport themselves wherever they want, and government is going to come in with a plan.
To help us.
To help them. They love you so much. Who's going to advocate for that? Now, the financial support, a lot of the people, for what we do, at the time of the Levolution, there was the idea, soak the rich, get the rich, 1% of the rich. These guys, if you're rich, you're a bad guy and you all should die. They were worried. Is there some place we can go? We didn't hurt anybody. We're not the ones yelling that the most. Gates and all these, they used the government for monopoly protection of, nobody can compete against, and we got a law. Hell, we did it legitimately, like selling stuff or doing stuff, and all of a sudden we're the bad guys? So the Levolution and a lot of the efforts that we did was to kind of take the heat off of that. They're not the bad guys. Just because you made money doesn't make you a bad guy. When you're making money off everybody, you justify, make yourself feel better because you go, well, we're going to give it to this foundation so we can rule you over here and tell you what you can't do over there and sustainable development of that. All of a sudden, they're supposed to be the good guys. It's all a psyop. As we were able to successfully take the pressure off of them, all of a sudden being rich wasn't bad, that you could be a good guy and be Elon Musk or somebody going out and saving the planet or something. Then all of a sudden the pressure came off, and Trump gets in, IRS is focusing on punitive damage of who supported whatever. Now they're starting to feel a little bit better. Well, that's just a hammer coming up before it bonks you again, Now stop hitting me, stop hitting me. Hey, they're not hitting me anymore. They're just raising the hammer. So I am, trying to get the opinion when you have the IRS saying these people can get, 501c3 in a nano moment where these guys are freedom oriented and they're never going to get it. This kind of thing needs to be outed, decentralized, show that you can be independent of their dependence of just an attitude. I don't know that you guys will understand everything that I do. I'm not really sure that that's important. Just know that any of the crazy stuff that's going to come out is not necessarily like, well, I don't think Ernie's going to get more votes doing that, That's not the goal. If I can get people to think decentralized from the grid, you're going to see a big change. And it's already happened. It's been happening. The problem is that now, 8 years later, there is another whole new wave of 20-year-olds that were 12 when all this was going on, and they don't know. So we need to reinforce. I'm all about junior high age, getting down to that, because that's when the hormones start, questioning authority, which side do I take, that kind of thing. So I'm all focused on that, and that's why I want to do fun stuff. So that's what's going through my mind. You will start to see before the end of the year, there will be a lot of things that will be done, and it'll probably be January, right at the convening of the new legislative session is when we always, over the years, the second Monday in January is when the legislative session starts and the state of the state is done by the governor. That week before, right after New Year's, is when we drop a lot of this stuff because the media is all getting, what are we going to do in the agenda of and how are we going to talk about and what now? Well, when they do that and we go, wham, this is what we're going to talk, they go, okay, I guess I got to write a story about that. So that's how we inject, always have for 30 years. So this is how, I'm going to tell the guys Monday, let me tell you how it's going to happen. I'll tell you the timing of it. I'm going to do it. You guys want to do it? You're going to do it? Do it, don't do it, I don't care, I'm doing it. When that happens, so you guys know what's going on, it's not going to be about voting. That's just a side effect. It's going to be about opinion being advocated. And why? This is what Tim's going to talk about. I am of the opinion that we are right where we were in 04, 5, 6, 7. By the time 7 hit, and I was doing radio then, real estate, Don's doing real estate, and we have a site category on Freedom's Phoenix called housing. We have economics, all kinds of stuff, but the housing thing, and I was screaming, get out now. In fact, I wrote an article, Sell Your House Now, but it was dated December of 2002. And it was on Lou Rockwell, and if they got out then, they would have missed a bunch. But it was for the same reasons. But what did they do? They changed the interest rates. They did all kinds of manipulation to create the housing bubble. Well, I'm always surprised at something they yank out of their butt, and I'm sure they're going to yank something out of their butt again. Tim can tell us, what his opinion that might be. But in the long run, when it goes, it's going to go. It won't happen all at once, but it will happen overnight. So my thing is like you can see it happen, and then all of a sudden it's Monday. There's a Monday coming. It might be this Monday. And when it happens, it's going to be for sure and for certain, and everybody's going to be in trouble. And you remember what happened last time. It's going to happen again, and it's going to be worse. Where are you going to be? And who's going to advocate the opinion to understand what should happen, what happened, and what we should do about it? And it's always Arizona. Tim.
Come on, Timmy.
Are you selling those shirts, Jim?
I actually will be selling the shirts on the website probably in a week or two. I've got a whole bunch of them that are coming out. How does this raise up?
Whoa,
He's got the deck.
All right, good morning, everybody. So, since this is being videotaped and since I do have licenses and this could be used against me in the future, I just have to give a quick boring disclosure. This is for informational purposes only. Everyone's obviously going to have their own unique circumstances. Talk to your own financial advisor. If you don't have one, I know a guy, lawyer, tax advisor, so on and so forth. Past performance is not an indicator of future performance. These are my opinions. They don't represent that of my company, my broker-dealer, or my RIA. Okay, there's the disclosures. So what I plan on doing today is I'll briefly touch on the strategies that I've come up with Ernie about these, rich Bitcoin millionaires. I want to talk about the different risks I see out there and why the pension funds, I'm pretty sure, they're going to go, just the timing of it. And I'm going to talk why I think that. Then also going to get into the different main retirement risks that are out there for people who are close to retirement or in retirement, and then, you know, kind of like the state of the union of what's going on in the economy and some things that you guys may or may not know. And if I end up talking to, a lot of times I talk really fast because I feel like there's a lot of stuff I want to get out, and I want to make sure I have, you know, whatever time frame I have, I just want to get out as much crap as I can get out. Because Ernie's talking about them, you know, pulling something out of their butt. Well, they've got a pretty big butt. There's a lot of things they can pull out of there. So, you know, I'm going to try to get through as much of it as possible. First, I just want to give a real high-level overview of the strategies that we were talking about with Ernie. So what a lot of people aren't aware of is when you hear guys like Bill Gates, you know, give away their money, or Warren Buffett give away their money. They don't really give away their money. When you set up various types of charitable trust.
Is that loud enough for you guys back there?
Yes.
Let's be a little bit taller. All right, when you set up various types of charitable trust, we got to get in the camera. When you set up various types of charitable trust, if you set up one called a charitable remainder trust, and in the example I was using was, you know, one of the Bitcoin gazillionaires. In this example, I was using a 55-year-old who put in this case, $15 million. Now, the government's going to make them at least take out 5% per year. So that guy, what would happen to him is he could put his Bitcoin, in this case, into a trust. And again, this is the oversimplification of what's really going on here. Put the Bitcoin into the trust. Then from there, it then allows him to legally diversify out. So you can legally then sell your Bitcoin and then put some into gold, put some into you know, real estate, puts them into, you know, foreign stocks, you know, domestic stocks. They spread things out across the board, because right now if you sell your crypto, you're going to be exposed to capital gains tax. Even if you go from one crypto to another crypto, technically the government is saying that that is not a like-kind exchange and that you're actually on the hook for taxes over there as well. So it's great that they have a lot of crypto money, but if you can't access it, and like the joke that Ernie was telling, then it's not really you know, that pertinent. Like, great, you've got a whole bunch of crypto, but you can't use it. Fantastic. So what I'm talking about is a legal strategy where if they put their money into one of these charitable trusts, the money is then going to them for the rest of their life. So in this case, you know, 5% of $15 million was $750,000 would be going to the Bitcoin gazillionaire. They then would also, on top of that, get a $4.789 million tax break, federal tax break deduction on top of that for giving away their money, but they were giving it away to themselves the entire time when they were alive. But it's way over everyone's head. So when all these guys get to grandstand about how philanthropic they are, what it is doing is privatizing philanthropy. It's a concept not a lot of people are really familiar with because it's, you know, level 500 advanced estate planning type stuff. Now, in concert with that, what happens is upon their death, their money then goes to a foundation. It could be a foundation that they set up. It could be a foundation that they like, what have you. And then, you know, there's a board of trustees, and then they manage the money in the way in accordance to your wishes, so on and so forth. And then the other thing that's going on here is because the other factor is, well, hey, I can't give away all my money because, you know, what are my kids going to live on? You know, what am I? You know, I want, you know, there's heirs that I want to take care for. So what they do is they take some of that $750,000 that I was telling you about. And so it's like if you were a rancher and and with a lot of these ranchers, the big problem they have is that upon their passing, they have all this illiquid assets, and then they owe the government half. So you've got a guy who's got a $100 million ranch. Now he's got to find a way. Now his heirs have to find a way within, you know, a few months to come up with, you know, $50 million to pay the estate tax, which means, you know, a lot of those cattle are going to have to be sold off at fire sale. So what I'm trying to say is, you know, take some of the, in this case, maybe the milk from the cows, use it to buy a life insurance policy. There's ways to have the life insurance actually be not counted as part of your estate as well. So there's what they call ILITs, or irrevocable life insurance trusts. So again, this is at a high level. It's not, I don't expect anyone to understand, but I just want to get the point out there that this can be done. They, them, those are using this against us, and so we ultimately have to use the free market against them, because if we have the Ford Foundations and the Gates Foundations and all these other foundations working against us, the only way we can counteract that is by, you know, having our own foundations, you know, for freedom, for liberty. So that's all I kind of want to touch on that. You know, do not try to do this on your own. Do not try to go to LegalZoom and set this up, because I will assure you that will probably end in disaster. But I do know the people who can make this stuff happen, and I'm one of the people that can help make this stuff happen. So what I want to segue into now is some of the things that I see out there on the horizon. The biggest thing I see on the horizon right now that's happening this month is what a lot of people are referring to as quantitative tightening. From 2009 until November or late October 2014, the Federal Reserve was printing massive amounts of money. On their balance sheet, it's about $4.5 trillion, $4.4 trillion. I mean, at a certain point, you start losing track of this stuff. Well, what they have been doing is every time a bond matures, they've been repurchasing the bond, and it hasn't been going out into the economy. Well, starting this month, they're going to start selling $4 billion in mortgages and $6 billion in treasuries are going to start rolling off the Fed's balance sheet. So $10 billion a month. Now, if the purpose of printing all this money was to have asset prices going up, and Ben Bernanke was even admitting this, and I was telling my clients this in 2009, 2010, then if you're doing the opposite of that, then wouldn't that have the effect of having asset prices going down? So if printing money is there to make asset prices going up, then wouldn't doing the opposite of that probably make the asset prices go down? I mean, I don't really expect anyone at the Federal Reserve to be smart enough to figure that out, but that's just my layman's perspective of what's going on. Now, it's starting at $10 billion a month, and every quarter they're going to up it another $10 billion, all the way till they get up to $50 billion. And so that hasn't started yet, and I'm not sure what day it's starting, but it's starting this month. October is when they supposedly are going to start this. The other thing I see on the horizon is there's going to be a new Fed chairperson more than likely in January when Janet Yellen's term ends up. Now, my line in the sand for Donald Trump is, if he were to reappoint Janet Yellen or a guy like Gary Cohen, who's big carbon tax, Goldman Sachs, that would be the absolute end of the line for me. But one of the guys that the prediction markets right now are pegging at 50% odds of being the next Fed chairman is a guy named Kevin Warsh. Kevin Warsh was a former Fed governor, I believe, until 2011. I'm not an expert on him, but when I saw this in the prediction markets, I wanted to do a little research on him. Well,
I don't want a prediction market.
So prediction markets is basically people are betting on real money on who they think on different political events. And so I don't think you're allowed to do it in America, but people overseas, half the smart money is betting on this Kevin Warsh character. Well, Kevin Warsh is saying things like he was the dissenting vote a lot of times. I mean, I'm not going to say he's like Ron Paul, because again, I'm not an expert on him, but just doing a little bit of research on him. He was a lot of times the dissenting vote where when every one of these guys wanted to print a whole bunch of money and girls with Janet Yellen wanted to print a bunch of money, he was the guy saying, well, hey, maybe we shouldn't do this. Maybe this is going to lead to a lot of inflation down the road. Maybe this is going to lead to a lot of unintended consequences that no one in this room in the ivory tower is smart enough to figure out. He's also saying, I don't think the Federal Reserve should be slaves to the S&P 500. And so now if we can have this convergence of, quantitative tightening mixed with a potential Fed governor who wants to raise interest rates and who was the dissenting vote, back, when it wasn't really popular when he's around all of his, Berkeley colleagues, because that's where, Janet Yellen hails from, is Berkeley, her and her husband. And so I think that's one thing that people aren't really, that's really not on anybody's radar right now, and that's something that is on my radar. But we've got a whole bunch of crazy things going on in the market where, from a valuation standpoint, one of the metrics is called the CAPE ratio. When I was here in March, I talked about it. What it is it's the price to earnings ratio or PE ratio, but it's adjusted over a 10-year time span. And the cliff notes of this is when it's high, it means the market's overvalued, and when it's low, it means it's undervalued. And so Dr. Robert Shiller, who is, a lot of you have heard of like the Case-Shiller Index. So this is his chart, Yale professor, not that means anything. But through his studies, what he found out was that every time it's in the top quintile of being expensive, aka where it is right now, so when you're in the top 20 percentile of being expensive, the market's forward 10-year return by market S&P 500 has only been 4%. Now, when it's in any other quintile, the market actually has a pretty good return. So if you're in the bottom quintile, aka like a 2009 type environment, the forward 10-year return is 16. If you're in the second quintile, it's 13. And this is like average over a 10-year time span. Third quintile, 11. Fourth quintile, 8. But right now we're in the fifth quintile, which is 4. So what that probably means is...
Quintile mean?
20%. So if you're in the bottom 20%, so you're in the top 20% of expensiveness. I'm not sure if that's a word, but where we're at right now in terms of valuations using that ratio, we're in the top 20% right now, which would indicate a forward 10-year return of 4, which, if you even believe the inflation numbers. If you don't believe the inflation numbers, I wrote a 16-page little booklet on it called How It's Rigged. Maybe so that way if I ever run for office, I can be like, oh, I wrote the book on how it's rigged. And I titled it. So, or you can go to the website, libertarianadvisor.com. I only proofread it a couple times, so if you see mistakes, let me know. And so the other thing that is going on is that in all this, I'm going to build up to the pension system because all this really has to do with where I see things going. But I also want to quickly touch on tax reform, is what they're calling it. But it's not really tax reform. I mean, I'm glad they're trying to get closer to zero, so that's a good thing. But we're just tinkering around with the edges until you come to grips with the fact that our money is made out of debt. In order to get the first dollar printed into the system on December 23rd, 1913, that had to be backed by debt. And so you can get away with that for a while, but once you're at $20 trillion of debt, then that doesn't even include Social Security,
or
Medicare, which is a greater unfunded liability than Social Security, and it doesn't include the wars or the unfunded healthcare expenditures. So the 20 trillion is like saying, going up to your financial advisor or somebody like me saying, yeah, I'm doing great financially. If you don't count my mortgage, student loans, car payment, child support, alimony, then yeah, if you don't count all the shit I actually spend my money on, then yeah, I'm doing pretty good. And so this 20 trillion doesn't even include any of that stuff. And so we're at the point now where even if the rates were 2% or 3% at the Fed funds rate, that means the government would have to borrow money probably at 5% of 20 trillion is $1 trillion in interest. And again, I mean, at what point, are we not complete economic slaves? And this is what really got me into this, is when I figured this out after reading Creature from Jekyll Island, and kind of to back things up, in 2007, I was in a class on the Federal Reserve, where my classmates, I wasn't on the competition because I was playing water polo instead, but the guys in my class who went to this competition, they beat out Harvard, Yale, and MIT, and all these big schools, won the National Fed Challenge. And so, I was in a position where, if I was on the class that won the national competition, and I didn't know it was private, well then how the hell does anybody else know it's private? And then if I had all these different licenses and I didn't know this, then how does anybody else know this? And then that's what really, sparked my passion of all this, is because, I was in the prime spot to know this stuff, and I didn't know this stuff, because most people aren't taking classes on the Fed or public finance or any of this stuff when they're in school. And so that's what really, lit a fire up underneath me. So I'm glad that the rates are getting closer to zero, but, no amount of tax, tinkering around with the edges is going to save anything. There's no saving the system. It's at the point where it needs to be, completely overhauled, scrapped. You can't have the money backed by debt. Until that, if you can address the politicians could be 100% right. Yeah, I mean, fat chance of that happening on every single issue. Let's just assume they were right. Let's say you put Ernie in there or Ron Paul, and they're right in every single issue, but you don't do anything with the Federal Reserve and the fact that our money's from debt, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter whatsoever. So now I'm going to get into the pensions. So according to the government's own numbers, they are only underfunded by $1.4 trillion at the state and local government level, which it amounts to 75% funded. According to the American Actuarial Standards Board, they're closer to $5 trillion underfunded, or 39% funded. And the other problem is you have baby boomers right now. 50% of them have less than $100,000 saved for retirement. And so a lot of times people use something called the 4% rule, meaning you take 4% off your investments, and that's so if you have $1 million, you can live off $40,000 a year. Well, if you have $100,000, you can live off $4,000 a year. And so half of baby boomers aren't even going to be able to live off $4,000 a year, and they're going to have to completely rely on Social Security. Their Social Security average payment per year is a little over $16,000, $16,320. So you're talking that the average baby boomer is going to have to subsist on $20,000 a year, and then the people at the Federal Reserve are going to be printing the money, which is then going to be devaluing everything they buy, and then the government's going to rig the inflation data. So even if the inflation was 3 admitted, and it might really be 6, and so they're only going to give you a cost of living adjustment of 3 when it was really 6, and then they're going to rob you on the other 3. I mean, even at like a 3 or 4% inflation, I mean, the average retiree is probably going to see everything they buy, quadruple over their lifetime. So, that $20,000 meager amount you're going to live off of, when you're 66, if you end up living to 90, is going to be like $5,000 a year, assuming like a normal type of like 3 or 4%, not even assuming a much higher level. And the guys that have $100,000 in savings, they're not going to have a bunch of money in stocks that are going to help them counteract this. So we're in a real crisis. And one reason why the math and all this stuff is so much worse now than it was in 2007 is because the baby boom started in 1946. If you add 62 to 1946, you get 2007. So the baby boomers were just starting to hit Social Security age in 2007 when all this stuff started going down. Now, the baby boomers, 10,000 a day are turning 65. Another 10,000 a day are turning 71. At 71, or technically the April 1st after you turn 70 and a half is when the government makes you start taking money out of your 401ks and IRAs. And so now we're in a situation where there's going to be this forced withdrawal from the seniors' retirement accounts, and there's going to be forced withdrawal from the pension funds because in 2007, a lot of the baby boomers weren't actually withdrawing funds. So if you average, let's say 10% a year or 5% a year or 4% a year, and you're not withdrawing funds and everything goes down, doesn't really matter if you're not withdrawing funds because you can ride things out, as long as you weren't in something terrible like Lehman or something that completely bombed or went to zero, you're probably going to, be okay. However, once you start withdrawing funds, the math changes completely. I recently just built a website. It's actually live now that you can go to. I haven't really pitched it out to anybody, but it's called sequenceofreturnrisk.com. And so I have like a 3-minute little presentation on there that then links to a 15-minute presentation if you guys are interested enough. Sequenceofreturnrisk.com. So my main business site is Focal Point Wealth, but I've got these 3 other websites I'm trying to tie into it, and that will probably be done in the next month, but hasn't been done yet. But with sequence of return risk, why this is important is, let's say you have a situation where the market goes down 20% and you're pulling 4%. So the typical person that is pulling 4%, market goes down 20, they would have to have their accounts go up 42% over the next 3 years to get back to even, to basically have the principal go back to where it was before. Now, if we're at 39% funding ratios after a 9-year supposed recovery and bull market with tax receipts at all-time highs and stock market at all-time highs and basically everything at all-time highs, maybe media corruption at all-time highs, everything's at all-time highs, and we're still in this disaster scenario, then what's going to happen the next time the market goes down? So it doesn't matter if the pension funds average 10% a year. If they in the next couple of years have a big negative, 20, 30, 40, 50%. The California pension, they're called CalPERS. I don't have it's in here. It's my article somewhere where it's CalPERS, California Pension something retirement systems. Anyways, they just bumped down their assumptions from 7.6% down to 7%. They haven't even been earning anywhere even close to 7%. They have 60% of their stocks, or 60% of their assets are in growth stocks right now. I mean, growth stocks in 2008 went down close to 60% at one point. And if you go down, and I've got the math here, so if you go down 50% and you're pulling 4, you've got to go up 132% over the next 3 years just to get back to even. And so this is assuming you're at even to begin with. These guys are only at 39% funded to begin with. And if you go by their own numbers, they're at 75% funded. Oh, great. We'll use your numbers, 75%. Only $1 trillion underfunded. Like, okay, let's use that number. So that means they're going to have to pull a whole hell of a lot more than 4%, probably a whole hell of a lot more than even 6%. And then there's all these other factors that play into this. And really these factors play into pension funds even more so than your standard retiree. Can anyone tell me out there what actually is the biggest risk a retiree faces?
Yeah.
Eating too much bacon after the morning breakfast clubs.
Inflation.
That's one of them. So I've got 7 risks, but Ernie was pretty close here. Ernie said death.
Sexual transmitted.
It's actually living too long is actually the greatest retirement risk. They call it longevity risk. because the longer you live, it's a risk multiplier. So the longer you live, the greater the chance that inflation can ravage your retirement. The greater the chance deflation could actually happen, and there is a scenario where deflation could happen. The greater chance that you could have sequence of return risk or market risk. But I'm going to real quickly kind of go over some of these big risks that are out there. So longevity risk is number one, just because it's a risk multiplier. The other ones, aren't in any particular order here. But you got market risk. So think, 2008, 2007, when everything went down. So that's the risk that the market can go down. I think we're all familiar with that.
So when you say risk on the first one, it sounds like you're saying risk to the people that give us the money, the risk to the government. It's not a risk to me to live too long.
To back it up, I said for the retirees, like an average retiree. I wasn't talking about a pension fund in this case.
No, Social Security. It seems like I win if I can live longer. I get more money if I'm alive next year than this year. So it's a risk to the people paying me the money. That's banking.
Social Security, and that's, whether or not you're going to have guys like me who are going to say, that's not my debt. Why should I be paying your Social Security? It's not my problem that generations above me let politicians squander all of it, and people weren't paying attention. So now now my kids and grandkids have to be slaves to pay you back. So there actually is a risk for you, because if you get guys like me, I'm like, well, if it were me, I'm like, fine, figure out the time value of all the money, of all the pensions, and boom, we'll print it up, give it to you, and then, because if you can either deal with all the inflation immediately, or you can deal with all the inflation over time, either way, you're going to get to the same point, but it's not my debt, so I don't think I have any responsibility to pay Social Security, and I still do, so you're welcome for all the people out there collecting Social Security.
I'm still paying your Social Security.
They borrowed ours.
I'm paying yours.
The longevity risk is not the fact that you're still getting Social Security money. It's just that when you're 80 years old and you get $20,000 and
purchasing power.
You go 5 years later and you're getting $20,000 and it's buying you loaves of bread.
Yeah.
So there's a longevity risk. I'm living longer on less.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just want to add one more thing about inflation. The second thing is debt. Overall government debt, personal debt, worldwide debt, which is, of course, going to cause inflation.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And a lot of the beginning of what I talked about was, 20 trillion in debt and how that doesn't include Social Security, Medicare. So I'm definitely hip to the fact that we've got too much debt. But when I say longevity risk, I was specifically talking about what's the average retiree. So I'm not talking about Social Security or pension. I'm talking about, anyone out here who's retired. The greatest risk is actually living too long, because then it amplifies all the other risks that are out there. It's a risk multiplier. So I mentioned we've got market risk. So think 2008, things going down. And for reference here, the stock market earnings are actually just basically eclipsed where they were in November 2014. So the stock market is a whole hell of a lot higher, but the earnings are basically, now they finally got back to where they were in 2014. The next risk on here is inflation risk, which I think we're all, pretty aware of that. Now, there actually is a chance that there's going to be some deflation risk in the interim. Now, I don't mean deflation as in like the government pulling the money supply. I meant deflation in terms of kind of with a market risk of asset prices going down. And the reason I say this is you've got a lot of money that's stuck at these zombie banks. You have the average retiree or baby boomer who only has $100,000 in savings, and they've got a 3,000 square foot house. Well, guess what? This is going to create pressure for these people to start downsizing, to start realizing they didn't save enough money, start realizing, hey, we don't need a Lexus in this, we need to be able to eat. So a lot of the retirees are going to have to, A, start working longer, and B, they're going to have to start downsizing their lifetime, which that could then actually have a temporary deflationary effect while this is going on in the interim. But I'm not smart enough, and nobody's really smart enough to know the timing and all this stuff. And when I was at Nexus, I asked all basically the legends this, like the Peter Schiffs and G. Edwards and Doug Casey's and Ron Paul and anyone I could steal some few minutes with, how they think the next crisis is going to play out. And pretty much none of them could tell me, which is a good sign, because otherwise it'd probably be lying, because it's so unpredictable. Because when you've printed this much money, the last people that know what's going on is the Federal Reserve. And I think I started an article yesterday, even on one of my mainline financial advisor things, saying, when are people going to stop listening to Janet Yellen? And this was on a mainline. This was not on like Zero Hedge. It was on like a mainline advisor thing I get. So we've got longevity risk, market risk, inflation risk, deflation risk, sequence of return risk, which I already highlighted. And again, I've got the website, sequenceofreturnrisk.com. And the reason why I'm getting so active right now is because I wanted people to say, where were you during this, and how come you didn't warn people? Well, I am. So consider this a warning. In 2007, I was running my school student managed investment fund, just specifically in financial stocks, and I said, don't buy any financial stocks as a 21-year-old, and got my butt chewed out by every single dean, everybody. And then that fund had one of the best performing endowment funds in all of America in 2008, and at one point was the top performing one. I didn't get any thank yous for doing that. Now, the other big risk that you have, and this really plays into the pension funds, and this really plays into retirees, is a concept called interest rate risk. Has anybody heard of interest rate risk out there before? Knows what that means?
Yeah, they cut your interest rates down to 0.75%.
I guess that's one way to look at it, and that's true. But when you cut the rates down, what happens is the price of bonds works like a teeter-totter. So when you raise the interest rates up, the underlying values of the bonds go down. When you lower the interest rates, the underlying values of the bonds go up. So basically, since I was born in '86, that's when rates were kind of peaked out, and they've been going down ever since then. And so retirees who had bonds were actually making money, and they had interest rates that could buy them things. And even going back to 2007, when we put the fund into treasuries, you could actually make money in treasuries. Today you make next to nothing, but you're taking on what's called interest rate risk. So here's how it works in real life. You're in a bond fund with $1 million. Let's say you've got a 10-year duration on the bond. Rates go up 1%. Your $1 million is now $900,000. Rates go up 2%. Your $1 million, because of compounding, is probably like 780-ish. So for compliance reasons, I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but it's around there. So you guys can see, this could play a lot of danger. So if you have a Federal Reserve that has $4.5 trillion on their balance sheet, that's all bonds, and they are talking about rates going up, do they not have calculators? Are they complete idiots? That if they obtain their objective and actually raise interest rates, then they're going to blow themselves up and blow everybody else up. And about a year ago, when Brexit was going on, one of the congressmen out here, David Schweiker, was speaking with Janet Yellen, and he asked on Facebook, does anyone have any questions? And Schweiker had actually picked my question, which was basically the scenario that I was just laying out right now about interest rate risk in the Fed's portfolio, and what's going to happen with that. And Janet Yellen's response was that that's impossible. So Janet Yellen told me that my scenario is impossible, and that question actually then got picked up on the Peter Schiff podcast, where Peter Schiff's like, yeah, it was a boring day except for the one question, and it was my question.
What was your question?
It had to do, it's kind of inside baseball, and so that's why I knew Schweiker would be one of the only people smart enough to understand this, but it had to do with interest rate risk. And the other concept is, right now, at the time the Fed was collecting 0.5%, or the Fed was giving to the banks 0.5% in interest. So we actually pay the banks not to lend their money out. Go figure. Yes. So we were paying the banks at the time 0.5% interest to not lend their money out, but we were collecting 2%. And so there's a spread there, so the Fed was actually making money on this. And so my question was, well, we've got all these longer-term bonds in your balance sheet, we're collecting 2%, and you guys, all of you charlatans think that, are claiming that the rate's going to be 3% within a couple years, which is probably not, but you guys are claiming it's 3%, you want to get it to 3%. Well, if you're paying the banks 3% and you're collecting 2%, and then now you're losing 1%, are you going to start sending, because what happens now is the Fed actually sends the Treasury they actually give back, what they call it, they give back 94% of the profit, which means they skim off 6% and give it to the banks, is the other way to look at that. The glass half empty. Yes, sir.
If they keep raising the interest rate, the cost of carrying the interest on the national debt will become impossible.
According to Janet Yellen, sir, your concerns are impossible. It's what she told me.
Well, if you just print more money, yeah.
Well, we got people from Berkeley running stuff who live in these ivory towers, who don't know anything, whose greatest concern is that the things you guys buy, the prices of it isn't going up fast enough. The number one concern around the world of central banks is that everything you buy doesn't cost more money quick enough. The number one concern is that there's not enough inflation. Well, they're going to get, hold on long enough, and they're going to wish they never wanted all this inflation because it's all being pent up.
In my reference point, and I'm not as much educated on Jewish, they're intentionally doing this to destroy the whole American economy, the world's economy, to come up with a new thing for control, to market the beast, the back of your right hand or your forehead, you can't buy or sell. So to me, it's all by design. Where you're thinking the Federal Reserve, they don't know. No, I'm thinking, no, they do.
Well, I'm very familiar with, you got Paul Warburg, who was the first Federal Reserve chair, first, basically the predecessor of the Council on Foreign Relations, where he said you shall have one world government, it's only a matter if it's through consent or request. So, I mean, the ultimate plan is to, and believe me, there are a lot of people there who just don't know what's going on, so it's not all a big conspiracy, but the ultimate plan would be to have like an SDR, special drawing right, where you've got this one world currency that's made up of all the other currencies, so you can still use your dollar, but it's going to be tied to this other fiat BS, and maybe now they'll try to tie it into crypto, so then that way they'll have crypto ushering in the mark of the beast, but that's kind of more Ernie's forte of getting into all that stuff. But I mean, the Federal Reserve is, the fact that she said it's impossible. I mean, an alien attack tomorrow could be possible. I mean, anything could be possible. And she's saying that my scenario was impossible, which, we've got it on tape now, so at least, I'll maybe be able to make like a Peter Schiff was right type video, at some point in the near future.
Well, you got to tell Peter Schiff and Aspen, this story. He goes, that was my question.
And he tried to hire me, and I turned it down. So.
Did he really?
Yeah, he goes, well, do you want a job? Because that's when I was in Scottsdale.
I'd do it part-time.
The question I had, how do you think the demise of the petrodollar is going to impact people here domestically? Because more and more countries are opting out of the petrodollar and they're paying for oil with gold.
Yeah, I mean, not only are countries opting out of the petrodollar, but Steven Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary, another Goldman Sachs guy, he was threatening China about 2 weeks ago, saying, "If you guys don't play by the rules, we're not going to let you use the dollar." I'm like, how effing stupid are you? You're not going to let them use the dollar? You're playing right into their hands, and then you think that, I mean, if they tried to get off the dollar, we would end up bombing them, and now we are threatening them, saying, you're going to get off the dollar. I mean, I can't even believe this. So
there you go. We quit. No, you're fired.
Yeah, that goes back to what I'm thinking. The Secretary of the Treasury, Mnuchin, whatever the name is, he's from Goldman Sachs. Trump put him in there.
Right.
They're doing this on purpose. They're playing us. It's all got to do with the money, the love of money, and control.
yeah, I mean, ultimately, the only reason this whole entire charade that we call basically life is able to go on in America is because, the dollar is backed by, force and fiat, where if other countries weren't buying their oil in dollars, this whole thing would have never gotten to the point where it's at to begin with. And we are expediting this off of this course.
Yes.
What do you see in the future for precious metals, gold and silver?
I mean, long term, I think it's a good hedge. Where, I mean, if you have 5 to 10% in your portfolio, I think it's a good idea. But I don't look at it as an investment from the standpoint of I'm in this to make a lot of money. I kind of peg it as this is the real money, and the price of the dollar is just a reflection of the perception of what's going on.
Would you agree that gold and silver is the only real money if it ever existed?
And palladium and platinum.
Yeah, I mean, it's something tangible, and I think just the other day I saw, Ernie sent me an article yesterday where it was from Zero Hedge, and it was, I think it was the guy from Goldman Sachs, Lloyd Blankfein, talking about Bitcoin, or maybe it was the CEO of Morgan Stanley saying, well, in the 70s we stopped backing the dollar with gold, and people accepted that, so maybe people will accept Bitcoin. So ultimately money comes down to what people are willing to accept. The problem is it can't be tied to debt, because when it's tied to debt, we're in this high-tech slavery. And honestly, I'm in a position where I benefit from this because, I manage money for people, and when we print more money, the values of the stocks go up. When the stocks go up, my clients make more money, so then I make more money. And
Donna's going to pass around the hat for a little.
When the stocks go up, that's because of inflation. It's a false dichotomy.
No, I agree, because if you look at the top
really dirty hat?
Look at the top performing stock markets in the world, it's places where the currencies collapse, so like Venezuela, and so that's why I think it's important to have stocks. I think the stock market is going to be at $1 million someday, but it's going to be at $1 million because it's going to cost you, $300 a gallon in gas.
Yeah.
And so it's important for people who have money to be diversified, where they have assets in the U.S. stock market, foreign stock markets, precious metals, gold, a little bit of crypto, real estate, and because there's no silver bullet of, I'm going to put all my money in one place, and well then, again, I would have thought the stock market would have went down when we stopped printing money in October 2014, but so I think we're already living on borrowed time, and I don't know when it's going to happen.
In my mind, I'm thinking of it's not so much the value or the cost, it's purchasing power. That's why I lean towards metal, because I bought metal, but it's not up there, and I'm losing as an investment. But in the long haul, when the whole thing collapses, when you want to start bartering and trading, I think I'll be ahead of the game. So to me, it's purchasing power, and they play games with it, as your article says. They're lying about the inflation rate, blah, 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 how they're counting the debt, and all this debt they're owed the banks. It's my understanding they owe the banks. They don't owe me and you in that sense. They owe the banks. The banks have got to figure out how to take what you have. And then they call it a debt, and it's through that derivative housing market, which is a scam, and now student loans is coming on us. The whole economic system is a scam. That's why some of us work for the imperishable, not the perishable. John 6:27, 28.
We definitely
get that in there.
You're definitely preaching to the choir, because I have the book How It's Rigged. So you don't have to tell me. You don't have to tell me how. You don't have to tell me that it's a big scam. But ultimately,
so this is before you finish. I want to make sure people. I want to make sure that we get a clear understanding of your opinion for compliance of your not, whatever. But the opinion of how financially the pension plans across this country, municipal, private, how that's going to unwind. Because before, when the thing happened in 0405, remember, it was the airline industry. The airline industry, all these pilots and everybody thought that they were putting all this pensions in, and then it just got redone, restructured, and it's not yours anymore, and it's gone. But it's got this federal backup plan, and we give you so many pennies on the dollar, and you're screwed. Yes. So this has already happened in this country. It already happened. So in other countries like France and so on, I'm sorry, it's not your pension, it's our pension, and what. So now I need your opinion of how, and quiet, I need your opinion on how this is going to transpire. What is going to get hit first? Is it going to be private, company? Is there a pool of something? I had no idea this airline thing had their own backup crap. And now
everyone pays into what's called the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation. But again, it's like an FDIC. Yeah. But FDIC is like me trying to backstop Bill Gates. Like saying, oh yeah, I'll insure you, Bill Gates, but yeah, here's my bike, whatever you can sell it for. I don't know. And a few other trinkets.
But don't you think the pensions are backed by the stock market, because all the pensions invest their money in the stock market keeps going up? That the pensions
but then we've got and that's where it's a sequence of return risk, because it doesn't matter if the pensions average 10%, if there's this 5-year period where they go down for a while where we've got the demographic risk of the senior baby boomers who are just now starting to poll, because in 2007 when things went down, baby boomers weren't polling. Right. Now the baby boomers are polling, so they don't have another 9 years to go ride this out, because this is going to happen. And I don't know what's going to be the first domino to drop, but what's probably going to happen is the politicians aren't going to have the courage to let the politicians are probably going to end up, demanding that we print this money to go save everything. And so getting back to your point is what I'm trying to do for my clients is ultimately protect their purchasing power by being diversified in different places, because it doesn't matter if you have $1 million and 10 years from now you still have $1 million if everything you buy costs 3 times as much. So what I'm trying, and I think, like Peter Schiff made an example, and you've made this example where, an ounce of silver can always buy you a nice rifle. It doesn't matter if an ounce of gold can buy you a really nice rifle, or a really nice suit. And it could do that, 5,000 years ago or 100 years ago, and it could do it now. So when the price of gold went down to 600, you could buy a nice rifle for 600. When price goes up to 1,200, you could buy a nice rifle for 1,200. I mean, so I'm really more concerned of protecting my client's purchasing power, not whatever the dollar amount is on their statement necessarily.
Yeah, well, you read The Creature from Jekyll Island. I mean, what we're talking about here is the Federal Reserve note, which is a counterfeit, phony paper money.
Yes.
Backed by absolutely nothing, but all the trees in the forest and all the barrels of ink they can print. Yeah. We're not talking about the real dollar. What we have is not dollar bills, they're FRNs. It's a phony deal. It's unconstitutional. Yeah. You read that.
It's unconstitutional.
Yeah.
I mean,
Hopefully our government doesn't get any ideas. Hopefully our government
I
doesn't.
know it's a joke. I know the Constitution's a joke today because but that's what we got to get back to.
Wasn't
We gotta
George
get back to
Bush that
normal.
said that's just a goddamn piece of paper or something like that?
I know.
But there's actually other countries that are even doing things more messed up than we're doing, which is giving this false facade. So in Japan right now, what they're doing is, and again, that's old school. They're not taking all the trees and ink. They don't use ink anymore. They just print it up on digits. So
It's click them out.
it takes too much time to print the money out of nowhere. So what they're doing in Japan is they're taking money out of thin air that they're just typing up on keyboards and buying up their own stock market with it. So their version of the S&P 500, the Nikkei 100, they're buying up their own stock market with it to the point where I don't know the exact number because it changes all the time. There's too many numbers to keep track of. But it's like 70, 80, 90% of the new issuances are being bought by Japan's central bank. And so it's rigging everything. We're living in this bullshit economy where everything is being artificially manipulated by the central banks. This year alone, there's been $2 trillion worldwide that's been injected into the markets by other central banks around the world. Something like 40% of the new bond issuance are actually negative around the world. In 2014, the Federal Reserve, there's something called dot plots. What dot plots are is it's where the Federal Reserve governors, it's their estimation of where they think rates will be in a 1, 2, 3, 4-year time period. You go back to 2011, 2008, they were saying by 3 years ago the rates would have been like 4%. And so you go back to 2014, they were still thinking it was going to be 3 or 4% by now. And I was calling BS on this all along, and that was like the tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist. I'm definitely 3 standard deviations away from the average financial advisor on a lot of these opinions. So I'll just get that out there, that these are not the average opinions because a lot of them don't know enough to have an opinion, at least that means anything. But I forgot where I was going with it. What was I talking about? Yeah, my blood pressure.
That blonde-haired girl.
The plot thing. The plot.
Oh yeah, so with the dot plots, so in 2014 what was going on is that we stopped printing money. It was like right around this time, 2014, like Halloween. 2 days later, the Bank of Japan massively increased their program. About a month or two after that, the ECB out of nowhere massively, or for the first time ever, started up their bond buying program. So people were of the opinion, it was the wrong opinion, that okay, well the rates here are going to be 3 or 4% soon, and we better, things are going to be great. And I had clients saying, oh well, I don't want to do this strategy because the rates are going to be high, and the rates are going to be high. I'm like, well, no, they're not. They're just, it's a fake it till you make it. They can't be high because you have too much debt, and if they were high, it would, they would cook their own goose, and they're backed into a corner. They're backed into a corner that they backed themselves into, and there's no way out of it. Do you want? What are the options? Do you want to get punched in the face or kicked in the nuts? I mean, I don't know. Either way, it's a bad
face. Wait.
Yeah, okay, yeah, the face. Yeah, the face. So it's bad options all the way around. But what happened in 2014 is that people were like, okay, well, we're on this normalization period, and so the dollar shot up in value. It shot up like 40% or something like that in over a very short time span. But that's because other central banks are printing money, so it made the value of the dollar look relatively better. What also happened at that point is that China had their yuan tied to the dollar, and so when the value of our dollar went up 40%, it meant that the value of the Chinese yuan went up 40% as well because they pegged it, which meant if you were a German citizen buying Chinese crap, now all your Chinese crap cost 40% more, and so everybody then blamed that that little crash that happened in 2000 and to start year 2016 is when the market started on a violent downturn, and then people were probably thinking, oh well, the market went up. Like what changed? Did the company's profits go up? No, they actually got worse. Did the GDP expectations go up? No, they actually went down. So all the actual real hard data was going down, but then the stock market went up. So that's why I gave a presentation in March called the Trump effect and why good news is bad news, is because there was so much bad news coming out, which gave cover to the Fed not to raise rates. So the bad news meant that it was good news, and so when we have good news, and I say this in quotes, that's less of a cover for the Fed not to raise rates, which means they're going to have to raise rates, which then leads to bad news. So we live in this, twilight zone where good news is bad news and bad news is good news. Or really today, it doesn't matter. Good news or bad news, it's all good news because the stock market is going up no matter what. It's like, oh, North Korea is going to go bomb somebody. Oh, great. another 100 points. This thing's gonna happen. Oh, another 100 points. Oh, the dollar could collapse. All these things could happen. Oh, great. Doesn't matter. Stock market's going up. And so there's another index called the VIX index, volatility index, and it's been hovering at basically lows since the last 30 years, since my lifetime. Very, 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 very quiet right now. But there's something else called the global chaos index, and that's through the roof. So how do you have a global chaos index that's through the roof, and then the volatility index is all the way down, and at some point something's got to break? And then how do you have people fleeing to bonds, which are safety, while at the same point people are going into the stock market, and then the main buyers of the stock market are actually the companies themselves. So then the companies, what they're doing is they're borrowing money, then they're using that borrowed money to then buy up the stock market. So a lot of these companies are earning less money, but now there's less shares outstanding, so the earnings per shares in some cases have gone up. So it's all these little accounting gimmicks. But what I do for, I guess I'll wrap this up now. What you guys can do as action items here is I do have that 15-minute presentation that you can get at sequenceofreturnrisk.com. And what I do with people when I meet with them is the first thing I do is really try to establish what their goals are. Everyone's going to have different goals. What's the best case scenario? What's the worst case scenario? Whether it's how much money you want to leave your family, how much money you want to live off of, and it's really establishing what those goals are. The other thing I would mention is how much risk can you actually handle. So I use a software tool that I spend a lot of money a month to use. It's not one of these little questionnaires that you see most financial advisors give out. I think it's the best one I've ever seen, which is why I spend a lot of money per month on it. And what it does is it tells you how much risk on a scale of 0 to 100 that you can handle. So let's say you can only handle a 50 risk. What I can do is then I can plug your portfolio in and tell you, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, your portfolio has a 75 risk in it, and you can only handle a 50. And where I go from there is when I come up with a financial plan, I take the risk that I ultimately try to reverse engineer their retirement, whereas a lot of people come up with different financial products and they figure out how much risk you can handle, and then they put you in a portfolio that has the most amount of risk. Whereas I'm like, well, what are your goals? And then let's try to take on the least amount of risk to hit your goals. But first you need to know how much risk you can handle and how much risk is even in your portfolio. Because I've had little old ladies come to me who took the test and could only handle a 25 risk, and their portfolios were 88. And they thought they were in something that was like a 30, because a lot of these big, safe, blue chip companies, a big, safe, blue chip company like the S&P 500, the Dow Jones, carries a 78 risk, which a lot of people aren't aware of that. So when I come up with these financial plans, we're ultimately trying to reverse engineer to have them hit their goals, taking on the least amount of risk possible. Then I will simulate sequence of return risk into the financial plan. So we do 1,000 scenarios, and then when somebody retires, what I'll do is, let's say they're 62 years old, they want to retire at 66. I'll say, okay, what if we layer in a negative, and then backing up a little bit, when we do the riskalyze or the risk questionnaire, I can simulate what will happen in a 2008 type environment, a financial crisis type environment. I can simulate what would happen in a good environment, interest rates going up environment. So all these different environments I can simulate using standard deviations. And so let's say your 2008 environment shows you going down 39%. Well, then what I'll do is I'll then simulate that and show, okay, your portfolio goes down 40% year one. What's that going to look like for your retirement? Because if it goes down 40% year one, it doesn't matter what we average, because you got walloped year one. And so I will simulate that into there and really try to make as foolproof portfolio as possible. Again, this is all subject to change because there's so much craziness going out there in terms of what could happen to the dollar, what could happen to any of the 9 million things we've already mentioned today. Now the other thing I do is this is really only pertinent for people that are close to retirement or in retirement. Is I am a big fan of different types of annuities. There's a lot of bad press out there. There's a lot of unscrupulous people out there selling them. There's a lot of annuities that are terrible for certain people. I've had one client who was a doctor making tons of money, maxed out at 401k, had tons of savings, and I got her into this one. And then I had a little old lady come to me who was in the exact same one, and I wanted to punch that guy in the face, whoever sold it to her, because it was absolutely inappropriate for her. But I have an animation that I've already got the first run made. I haven't released it yet, so I wish I kind of did this next month. So if you guys want to, I can give you guys a business card and I can send you the animation when it's done. But I can mathematically prove how let's say somebody was 60% stock, 40% bonds. I can mathematically prove where if that same person that was, in this case, if they were 62 years old, if they had taken my strategy, if their 40% of their portfolio, in order to equal the amount of income that I could get them, they'd have to average about 40% per year for 3 years straight to equal the amount of income that I can get them from one of these strategies. But then that's only one tiny piece of the puzzle, because the other piece of the puzzle is, because I believe is, let's say you need $50,000 a year to live off of, and you get $30,000 a year guaranteed. Well, what's the best way to get the other 20 guaranteed? And then that way we use the rest of your portfolio to hedge against the inflation risk. Because again, because a lot of these scenarios, you're going to win no matter what. You're going to win if there's deflation risk and everything goes down. There are certain ones out there where it's guaranteed to at least get your money back. And they also have income guarantees on it, where the income guarantees go up 10% a year while you wait. So if the market crashes, you can either get your money out and then have the same amount that you had to begin with, worst case scenario, or take the massive amount of income that you can get off of these. If the interest rates go through the moon, some of these are then invested in the market where, there's certain spreads on them where, if the market goes up, where it's not really a fee, it's more of a spread where they might take the first 3% because they're giving you a massive, they're giving you like a massive income guarantees off of these. And I get them in for income, not for an investment. So I want to be clear on that. Income, not investment. But let's say the market goes up 1,000%, I think a lot of people would be happy going up 997 in that type of scenario. So, so I think it's a good way for people to hedge. But again, if you're 30 years old, this is not really that pertinent to you. There's some that are, and again, this is not any blanket advice, because if you're, it's going to depend on how old you are, how old your wife is, what health conditions you guys are in, what your legacy concerns are, and so, I had a family, 2 brothers and a sister come to me, and all 3 of them, I'd recommend a different strategy for all 3 of them, because all 3 of them had something different going on. But there's a lot of bad salesmen that are out there who give it a bad name, and the biggest opponent of this is a guy whose initial is Ken Fisher. So Ken Fisher, if anyone has seen his commercials, he came out with a fund, I think in 2001, and recently he had to close down his fund. And the reason he closed his fund down is because of sequence of return risk. So his own fund went down like close to 60% in 2007. So it doesn't matter if you go down, it doesn't matter what you average. If year 1 or year 2 or year 3, you get pummeled. And that's what I really want to stress today. And again, there's many different ways to get to the same place. I'm willing to do whatever my clients are comfortable doing. And, I think that if you prepare now, you can, maybe even be better off when all this stuff happens. And I'm kind of wish it happened a couple years ago. My wife and I've convinced her to sell her house. I moved here from New York, bought my house the month of the market low, and I've made 1,000% return on the house. And now I'm thinking about, I've convinced her that hopefully by January we can sell it and then rent. And it gets to the point where my money, I'd rather put it back into my business or do something else to make more money, because I think a lot of the money to be made from the housing's already been made in my standpoint. I'm like, okay, I'll take the 1,000% return and go try to use it as dry powder when this stuff goes down. Because it doesn't matter if it goes down and you've got no money to invest. Because I graduated in 2008 and then started my own company, making nothing at all. So I was really pissed because I'm like, oh man, this is like the best time ever to invest. And I was screaming at people, and now, so I'm not this permanent bear. In 2007, I put the money in treasury bonds. After everything collapsed, I started the day Lehman Brothers went down. So I started September 15, 2008. After everything went down, I was begging everybody not to sell. And then so now here I am begging everybody to at least know how much risk they have. On my website at focalpointwealth.com, I'll let you guys take the test for free. It takes 5 minutes. You can see how much risk you can handle. And then if you want, I can send you what they call a secure email, which will encrypt any information back to me, where I can put your portfolio in it and say, hey, you have got a 45 risk. In a 2008 environment, this is what you can expect. In a 2013 environment, this is what you can expect. And so you at least should know what you have and how much risk you can have. And you should also know, because if you don't plan, if you don't plan, you can plan on failing. But there's so many things that go into financial planning that you wouldn't think of. Just like riding a bike. This is what I'm going to close on. If you have to go ride, anybody but Keith, what does it take to ride a bike? Does anybody? All right, so to ride a bike is, the average person is going to take balance. You're going to push your pedal down. But then if you get really into it, like I'm into it, because everything I do, I fully into everything. I can't run a 5K. I've got to do an Ironman. I can't just become a financial planner. I've got to get the CFP. Everything I've got to do it to the extreme. So on the bike, I've got a tool at home where it hooks up to my computer where I can actually measure the exact pedal stroke to see how efficient I am. I can ride any course I want in the world. I've got another tool on there where it's called a power meter, so I know the exact wattage I'm putting out at all moments. So I know exactly how much power I can put out for 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 2 hours, 6 hours, 5 hours, what have you. And so it's almost like cheating where I have these different data metrics and things that I pay attention to. And then there's all like VO2 max and your heart rate. And then eventually the goal is to get your heart rate lower while you're putting out more power. And there's all these different things that you can do, whereas if you weren't in the cycling world, you would never even think of that stuff. So, there's a lot, and again, I'm not the smartest person out there. I'm probably a little bit above average IQ, but I've got a really strong work ethic. Again, I'm not the fittest person out there, but I've got a really strong work ethic, and there's people who are a lot more physically talented than me are out there, but I'm beating some of them because I'm smarter than them, and I know the power numbers, and I know what I can put out, and so it's not because I'm the best or the greatest or the smartest, because I work hard, and I want to work hard to make sure.
Unless you have a flat tire.
Yeah, which I've got to go change that thing before I came over here. All right, so that's it. So I'm glad you guys listened to me, early in the morning about finance. It's not the easiest thing to sit through.
What
but,
should we look for? What's the signs of here it comes?
The signs are the quantitative tightening that's starting this month, and then the new Fed chair. If it's Kevin Warsh, he's a high interest rate guy, and so I think the signs are. I thought the initial sign was going to be when the Fed stopped printing money. Now it's when they're starting to, not roll over their balance sheet anymore. And they said they're going to keep rolling funds off. And the first thing they would do in another crisis, that they don't think is coming, but if there was another crisis, Janet Yellen said the first thing they would do is actually they would keep selling the bonds, but they would actually lower rates again. And so, we're in this complete mess. And I think it comes down to the dollar, people accepting the dollar, and this quantitative tightening, and then the new Fed chair.
Okay.
What about?
I got one more question. I want to make sure we get in on this. I didn't think that this was possible. They did it, and some funky called it another thing, and then all of a sudden our debt shows up on the Fed balance sheet. Is the Federal Reserve creating money to buy U.S. debt that then they get interest on, that then we got to pay for, that then you see my point? They're just creating. Here we print up a bunch of money that you owe, and oh, by the way, profit goes to the Federal Reserve for us, like doing the paperwork or something.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'll link some videos, and I'll send it to you, and you can put it on the Breakfast Club. So I made a quick, 8-minute video called "Why We're All Slaves of the Central Bank," where I show how it works or doesn't work. So you've got the Federal Reserve, you got the Treasury. They ceded their authority to print money to the Federal Reserve. Then the Federal Reserve then sells bonds to Goldman Sachs and the other prime brokers at 0.25%, or that's what was going on in 2008, and then they buy it back for 2.5% or 3%. So it's this complete scam where we're getting middled twice to get our own money back, and that was kind of the crux of my question to Janet Yellen. So it's a gigantic scam, but you can go on their website and they're like, oh, this is a good thing because it's a free market, and it would be bad if we just put it on our own balance sheet to begin with, so it's good that we put it out to this competitive bidding process. Then the big banks know it's coming, they front run it, they make money off it. It's a huge. If you can give anyone here that deal, here, I'll let you borrow at 2, and then I'll appoint 2, and then I'll immediately buy it back from you at 2. Who wouldn't take that deal? So we're getting screwed.
Alex has got a question.
Well, Peter Schiff always kind of makes an example what he thinks is going to happen is they'll either try to raise interest rates or start selling bonds, and that's going to create the asset crash, and then they're going to automatically reverse it and go 100%, 180% the other way, and then you'll see the inflation take off. So is that what you think is going to happen? We're going to see a crash, and that's when people are going to realize, oh shit, they can't keep doing this. They can't ever tighten. They always have to expand the money supply.
Yeah, we've gotten to the point where the noose is around our neck so much right now that there's no way out of this. We can't lower rates anymore. But
people always have this in their mind, well, one day they'll be able to reverse it. They'll be able to bring rates back to normal. So it seems like they can keep making the game go one way as long as people think that one day they're going to be able to tighten. So as long as they make people keep thinking they can tighten one day, they can just keep playing the game. It seems like
ultimately, we're not really right until 51% of the money realizes what everyone here has already realized. So it doesn't matter if you realize that the housing crash was going to happen in 2002 if everyone else didn't realize it until 2007. And so, Mitt Romney's dad once said, not in politics, it never really pays to be way out in front on an issue. And so, guys like Ron Paul, who had the integrity to be way out on these issues, where, he laid out exactly what was going to happen in the crash. But those guys get no credit because he's a stopped clock, or it's only. But going back to your point, is Janet Yellen did come out the other day and said that they would continue selling bonds if things got bad, and what they would do then is reverse course and start lowering rates again. Lower
see,
to what?
that doesn't mean when they say the Federal Reserve goes, we, whoever the hell they are, they have any kind of, they make decisions independent of, they just sell bonds. We just want to put money without a congressional mandate, without a treasury thing. It's just the Fed from out of the blue, and guess what? We're making more money, and we're selling bonds.
Well, Ellen,
so they sell the bonds to the central bank, and they got this window. The only people that can participate is Goldman Sachs and friends, and they say, here's the debt that we're selling. You buy it at 0.2% or something, then we're going to buy that asset from you, put it on the Fed's balance sheet here, give them a profit for doing it. Right?
Yeah, and then
that debt we owe to pay the debt back, while Goldman Sachs got a profit on it, and the Federal Reserve is sitting there collecting some money from us when we buy. Seriously, is that what's going on?
Yes.
Yes. It might even be worse than that, but yeah.
This is not sustainable, is it?
It's not. That's why I'm out here screaming. I mean, it didn't do me a lot of good. My grandpa, after I read the book Creature from Jekyll Island, like, you need to shut up on all this stuff. And he's a really successful guy, and he was the treasurer of Carrier Air Conditioning, and a brilliant guy. And he's like, if you ever talk about this, you're never get any clients. You need to just forget all this stuff you learned, because
you can't tell the truth, huh?
Yeah, and so you can't tell. But I'm out here, risking my CFP certification, risking my licenses, because if they do try to come after me, I think it should be on you guys, for all of you, charlatans over there who have not warned against this. I think I'm doing my duty trying to warn against this. I mean, I've been given, because it's a lot easier to try to, fix something before a huge crisis happens than to wait for a crisis. I mean, I got an award from Sheriff Joe for risking my life to bring an illegal alien back from the dead who drowned at Lake Pleasant. And yeah, there's a whole story on that. But if I was actually lifeguarding, was paying attention to the guy and told him not to do it in the first place, and then was out there immediately to get them, it wouldn't be a big deal. But because I had just finished swimming and I wasn't with this guy and he was 100 yards off the distance, it took a miracle basically to bring him back from the dead after 15 minutes. And so right now, there is no more. I mean, the Hail Mary was Ron Paul in 2008, potentially 2012. There's no more Hail Marys. There's no more magic easy button. There's nothing that can fix this, but the people who have assets, which are probably only 5% of Americans, or maybe 10%, who have enough money in stocks to even, maybe be able to ride this out. But then are they going to have the wherewithal to stay the course? Because then what's going to happen is they're probably going to get freaked out if things start to go down initially. They're going to get freaked out, put all their money in cash or bonds, which will probably be a good idea to do at some point. But then eventually the inflation is going to take off, and their money is not going to be worth the paper it's printed on. But I just don't know the timing of all this stuff.
Yeah, because our money is not really money. It's just promissory notes created by a fake private central banking system. The debt is not our debt. It's their debt.
Amen.
Correct.
It's their debt. Let them handle this thing. I mean, why should everybody suffer because of these crooks, socialists, communists, and criminals we got running this government? That's all they
I'm
are.
just a messenger.
I got two things. One for Ernie, but let me get the second one first. My personal economic theory is if you have it, somebody wants to take it from you, but that kind of addresses it. But forget all the college courses. But the other one, Ernie.
That was the IRS joke. The IRS, theirs.
Theirs, yeah. No, well, it's bank. But anyway, Ernie, we're looking for indicators. It's my understanding they're wanting to borrow federal pensions. Wink, wink, wink. Like they did Social Security. To me, that would be an indicator your money's kaput.
That already happened.
Yeah, no,
Hold on.
that's-
I wrote an article on libertarianadvisor.com recently on that, because whenever the debt ceiling, a lot of people were again, I was a big Trump supporter and probably did more to help Trump out than any other advisor in America. I started a Facebook page in end of August last year, and by the week of the election, it was reaching over 1 million people with the most anti-Hillary stuff that was out there. So believe me, I'm, not some communist but when you've got. But President Trump, a lot of people were grandstanding. Look at the great job he was doing. The debt hasn't gone up. Well, the reason the debt didn't go up is because they do these what they call extraordinary measures. And so one of the main extraordinary measure they do is the pensions funds, the government pension funds. There's something called the G fund for people who are it's sort of like the money market for the government. What they did is they borrowed over $200 billion in the G fund, and what that did was it was like if you have a credit card of $20,000 max and you're at $19,999, and then you figured out some sort of way to borrow money from somebody else and then pay that down for $2,000. I mean, what they did was this whole accounting gimmick where they stole, I think it was $237 billion from the pensions to then give it more headroom. There's a few other tricks they used. I have a whole article on it. I can try to link it in this thing. But yeah, they've already been doing that. They've been doing it for a while. Now they paid it back, but that's why the debt went up like $300 billion in one day, like a month ago. So if you're wondering why the debt goes up $400 billion in one shot, it's because they wait till the last possible second, and now they're talking about getting rid of the debt ceiling.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's all a big charade. It's a big charade, anyways. But I mean, imagine the damage that's been done to the dollar already with having a debt ceiling. Like, what's it going to do when you don't have a debt ceiling? I mean, they already don't care about it anyways.
That's going to make the Titanic look like a speedboat.
Yeah.
I don't know, and a lot of people have made this point, and so I didn't make this up, but, it's like what we're doing is arguing about the bar tab of the Titanic, or rearranging deck chairs in the Titanic. And I'm over here like, there's an effing iceberg over there. Can we please do something about that? But yeah, in this day and age, if you want to balance the budget or talk about not making your grandchildren slaves, then we're the extremist. So, and I just want to also let you guys know that not all millennials are dipshits. I think most of them are, but at least, I'm on the extreme outlier of a lot of people my age.
This thing can't continue. It's got to crash because it's based on a foundation of total BS, lies, smoke and mirrors, and socialism who doesn't understand a thing about real market capitalism and markets.
Well, I've been trying to think of a book title, and maybe it's got to crash.
But I think they understand it. They're working it. They're playing it. They're working it against us. Take your money. They know what's going on. They do know.
Never let a good crisis go to waste.
Yeah, no, stay up here. This is one thing I want to get a response on. We're up against a philosophy of because they can, they should. You're too stupid, and they oughta. What, in your opinion, if we were to oppose what's going on now, what are we in opposition to? What are we advocating for? What's the solution? No, we shouldn't do this. We should do that. What's that? And what's this?
I mean, I think decentralizing currencies where people could use whatever currency they want. If Ernie wants to make an Ernie coin, and then we can pay our taxes in it, and the government can do like a bit. What is it, bit instant or what's the no, we're not bit. We're the bit pay where it converts it back into fiat. So I think we need. Yeah. So I think the ultimate solution is we should have free market on the money, where it shouldn't just be forced to use their counterfeit money. If we really are this free nation, then we should be able to free to use whatever money we want. And maybe we have to pay our taxes in dollars, but why can't the Fed just accept any sort of fiat and then use some sort of technology, then instantly change it over to fiat dollars anyway? So I think it's decentralizing the money and ultimately making sure the money's not backed by debt, that the money's not backed by your grandchildren being slaves and their future tax revenue ability. Because eventually you could take, here's a little news flash, you could take all the rich people's money, you could take everybody's money, but you've got this much debt, this much money, you can use all the money to pay the debt, and the debt would still be there, and all the money would be gone, and everything would collapse, and the whole system's bullshit.
But the thing you're talking about is money is not real money. It's phony BS. That's what the problem is.
I think he said that several times.
I know, but we keep talking about money as though it's real, but it's not. It's promissory notes.
What we're using as money, though. It's an exchange. It's a medium.
Yeah, but sooner or later it's going to crash.
Just like Bitcoin.
Sooner or later I'm going to be dead.
Oh,
in the long enough time horizon,
it's whatever.
In the long term, we're all dead.
So, with this knowledge, what shall we do with it? That's one thing.
Hookers
Lance,
and
go.
My humble opinion, I usually keep my mouth shut, but this is the most important speaker that ever speaks here, okay?
Yeah.
You can talk about all the money and whether it's worth anything or not, but you gotta take care of yourself. Talk to him. He's a financial planner. You get your house in order, you can buy the jetpack. You know, you're not gonna be able to do all this independent stuff unless you play a little bit with the system. So, talk to this guy.
Understand
Let him make you rich.
the system. Whether I'm playing with it or not that's kind of a matter of opinion. How you're doing. Lance is doing okay because he, understood. Well, at least his wife did. So this is the foundation and the understanding that we have. And then what? What shall we do? It's just have the knowledge and opinion. And this election cycle is going to be one of the first ones to where these young guys that had this awareness, that read, The Creature from Jekyll Island, that has the ability to put information into a website, that's been able to use social media to be able to get this information out, which they're trying to stop. I mean, they're definitely trying to stop.
My censoring for a minute.
Yeah, go censor it, man.
Yeah, so last August, the Facebook page I created, August 27th, by the term of the election, I got over 30,000 people following it, and then I also was the first person to have a news list called Fake News go viral. Not saying that that's why it took off, but I was part of the overall zeitgeist of seeing where things were going. But you can see right after the election, and after I was getting throttled with all the anti-Hillary stuff, that the reach and everything is absolutely I mean, we're talking from 1,000 a day down to 2 people. So how do you go from 1,000 people a day liking you and subscribing to you down to 2? And telling me there's no Facebook manipulation, or there's no, I mean, even with that, I can still get the message out and still, if I wanted to, reach hundreds of thousands a week if I want to. But, this is why we need things like the next Facebook that's up. We need the next decentralized thing because, like what you say, it's Zuckerberg's friends. I'm under no illusion that it's a private company so they can do what they want. But, a lot of times like Google, we're using in-hotel CIA money to fund it in the first place. So don't come here as this Creative Commons that we're, going to be, don't be evil, and then use my tax money to do it to then, penalize me. So I mean, with communications, it's a big issue.
So this is what the campaign, what we've always benefited from for 30 years. There's like 3 months that a lot of people are paying attention to something. They go, all right, I'm going to do my due diligence, and I'm going to cast a vote. I'm going to vote. I'm going to go, I'm still voting. And they go in, they go, boom, I want to check out this candidate, this candidate, this candidate. What? Just to implant a little something. You got signs up somewhere. You're directing them. You're making them like QR coded, made you look, go to the site of what? To learn what? There's so many things. We could talk about Fiji. We can talk about Second Amendment. We can talk about, whatever. But I'm telling you, it's the economy, stupid. Okay? It is going to, it's always been that. When this hits, it is going to be, everybody's going to get a reset. Oh, damn, it affected me and everybody I know and love. If we can have hope and a solution and a decentralization of take care of yourself, freedom, there's an app for it, blah, 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 you do that. And you'll provide a platform for another expansion of awareness. And we had a big one. We've had a lot of them over the years in my lifetime, and I'm looking forward to the next one because I think we are close to the enlightenment or awareness of anarchy is only 100 kilometers that way.
2 miles up.
Just the last thing, Donna Hancock says that the dance floor is open right there to the east of the kitchen, so I'll meet you guys there. Donna's got the music going. Yvonne is going to meet you back there. Very good.
Thanks for coming, guys. Peace.
Okay. All right, Yvonne, come on, we're dancing.
Oh, I can dance. Thank you, Jim. Good job. Yeah, thank you.
Nice talk. Enjoy it.